What's up guys, Doomwake here and welcome back to another discussion video on the channel. I saw in the comments and the content and just the overall numbers that the discussion videos that we did last week really overperformed, so you guys seem to like that. And I think that we are going to be mixing some more discussion style content in the mix because the gameplay is good for what it is, but I kind of like having these discussions because I feel like it really gets more people engaged. Now, as far as what today's discussion topic is all about, if you guys didn't hear, this past Tuesday there was a weekly Magic stream, and Blake had specifically mentioned one particular thing about the ban list. Editor, roll the clip.
First, I want to be very clear. We are not changing our date or issuing any kind of off-cycle ban. Our announced date for the next BNR is August 26th, and we firmly believe that sticking to our announced date and not surprising people with random dates is the best for Magic and the best for players. We tried living in a world a few years ago, if you may remember, where bans could happen at any time, and it didn't work. For a variety of reasons, it didn't work. We want players to have confidence in their testing, in their deck choices, and to have firm, known dates when things can change. That isn't shifting. That is our philosophy for tabletop. Now, that said, the results of Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3 and the subsequent timing of the RCQ season have caused us to start taking a look at the timing of our BNR announcements in relation to our play season.
So Blake mentions a couple of things in this particular announcement regarding modern ban list philosophy and the history. So first and foremost, one of the important things that they said is they tried doing bans at any time or off-cycle bans, and it didn't work for whatever reason. Now, I went and did a little bit of research because I wasn't exactly sure on the timeline, and from what I found, it looks like the off-cycle, or not scheduled, ban announcements started in about January of 2020 and ended in May 2023. Let's take a look at some of the cards that were banned during that time. Oko Thief of Crowns from Throne of Eldraine, Mox Opal, not from Throne of Eldraine, but largely banned because of cards from Throne and or MH1. Mycosynth Lattice, again, not a new card, but was only really banned because of War of the Spark. Karn, Once Upon a Time from Throne, Arkham's Astrolabe from MH1, Field of the Dead from Magic 20, Mystic Sanctuary from Throne of Eldraine, Simian Spirit Guide, Tybalt's Trickery, Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath, Lurrus of the Dream Den, Yorion the Sky Nomad. And that was the last ban prior to when they went back and did their scheduled ban announcements in May of 2023. Now, if you look at all these cards, they kind of have something similar in common. A lot of these bans are from a period of time where Magic was just designed a little bit differently, and they needed to have these weekly bans to be able to keep up with all of these cards that were being problematic, and they realized that, and that's why they did that. I think the general philosophy is that when they stopped doing fire design, they didn't have to go back to scheduled weekly or off-cycle ban announcements, but the reality of the fact is, with some of the cards that they're printing in these Horizon sets and other universes beyond supplemental products, I really think that with those sets specifically, we need to take a more in-depth look and potentially have ban announcements more frequently than we would like to with sets like that. Another thing that Blake mentions is that they want players to have confidence in their testing and deck choices. Well, if the general consensus is that Nadu is going to get the axe on August 26th, the people who are preparing for RCQs in the first 3 weeks prior to August 26th, how can those players have confidence in their testing or deck choices when they're preparing for a format that likely isn't going to exist part of the way into the format? And also, it's very difficult for people to purchase cards right now because, again, you don't want to be buying cards for a Nadu deck that you assume is going to not be legal after August 26th, which, to be frank, is not that much of the RCQ season, but it's enough to cause an annoyance. For me personally, I think when I checked the Spice Rack website, there was about 7 or 8 scheduled RCQs prior to the 26th. I don't know if I'm going to play any of those. I have a deck ready to go. I have Boros Energy, which I was planning on playing for most of the season anyways, but my card choices are going to be extremely different versus Nadu World and non-Nadu World. So it's really tough for me to justify potentially going to one of these RCQs when I'm playing a format that is likely not going to exist. And not only do people not want to invest in Nadu, it's actually difficult just in a general sense. The format is so warped around Nadu as of right now, where if you look at all the top decks, they all have very specific sideboard plans for it, like a ton of hate cards. And just the metagame as a whole has shifted so much more to the lower end of the curve to be able to make up for the fact that you're going to be playing against Nadu X amount of times, and you really need to build your deck so much more aggressively, and not just in sideboard cards, but also in the way that you are structuring your deck. If you're playing like a Jund midrange deck, stuff like normal midrange can't compete, and you see the midrange deck of the format in Boros Energy is playing 8 to 12 1-drops, up to 8 to 12 1-drops, and they're lowering their curve so much just to make up for the fact that they need to kill the Nadu player before they establish the combo. Another thing Blake mentions is they want to look at the timing of the BNR announcements. So as of right now, they have the announcements specifically tied to set releases. Now, I think the reason that this particular BNR announcement is being so heavily scrutinized is just the timing of it all. Modern Horizons 3 came out. 2 weeks after MH3, that's their scheduled ban window. And I think that's a reasonable time frame if you have a tournament that ties with the release of it, say maybe the week after. But the problem with Modern Horizons 3 is the Pro Tour was 3 weeks after the set came out. So the ban announcement, maybe people don't even realize this, was actually the Monday before the Pro Tour. And a lot of people were questioning prior to the ban announcement, they were going to say, oh, well, if something is a problem, are they going to ban anything 6 days before the Pro Tour? And they explicitly came out and said, no, we're not going to do that. And I think that's great. I think that banning a card 6 days before the Pro Tour, especially when you have these pro teams who have spent multiple weeks testing, and if you're going to say, well, we're actually going to ban a card 6 days before the tournament, haha, go find a new deck, that's unfortunate for those players. So I understand their choice to make the ban announcement and not until after the Pro Tour. The problem with that is, what happens when you have a situation like Nadu? You don't really have a good window. Again, it's just very unfortunate the timing of all this, where the ban announcement was a week before the Pro Tour, and then the next scheduled ban announcement is not until Bloomborough, which just happens to fall a couple of weeks into the RCQ season. It's just everything about it is very, very unfortunate. Another comment that they made on the live stream was that they want players to know what changes are going to occur well in advance of things actually changing. It's really difficult to do that. And honestly, it's kind of funny that we're in the situation that we're in right now, because even though they haven't explicitly stated that Nadu is going to go, I mean, if you look at the public perception on Twitter, everybody assumes that. For example, there was a tournament that just happened this past weekend, SCG Baltimore, where, spoilers, there were 5 copies of Nadu in the top 8, 4 in the top 4. Tell me where I've heard that before. And the person who won the event was Misplaced Ginger. Shout out to Misplaced Ginger, great content creator. But if you look at this tweet from Misplaced Ginger, he said, Nadu is miserable. I thought it would be easy. Do the thing. Not a chance. Deck is insane. Play pattern is bad. I played so badly, but it didn't matter. I felt bad at some points. Obviously, it should be banned, but I didn't think I'd have the opportunity to play a broken deck like this. And I get that sentiment. I was somebody who, when Hogak was a thing, I played a lot of Hogak. When Eldrazi was a thing, I played a lot of Eldrazi. And it does feel good to play broken decks like that. But it's almost like Nadu is different, where it doesn't actually feel that good to play Nadu. The combo itself takes forever. So Corey Bowmeister did some coverage of the event this past weekend, and I was watching a match. It was Steve Stillman on Mono Black against his opponent playing Nadu, and I want to say his opponent took at least a 15-minute turn, and then ultimately just ended up passing the turn anyways, because I think there was some missequence of lands or didn't have enough blue to cast Thassa's Oracle, whatever. It's stuff like that. It makes the tournaments take way too long. It's too similar to stuff like KCI and Second Sunrise. But yeah, even the people who are playing the deck and winning the tournaments with the deck still say that it's not that fun. And then another tweet that I want to point you to is one from Ari Lax, who did play this same event this past weekend. I believe Ari ended up going 7-2 for, I think, a top 32 finish. Don't quote me on that. But he said, if you planned on attending a modern RCQ before September, just don't instead. And then follows that up with, if you say, oh, I'll just play Nadu and win, it will also be bad. The actual decisions are uninteresting. Most of your day will be taken up by meaningless game actions to avoid a 4% fail rate. You will want to be done and gone, but the deck will not let you lose and leave. So with all of that said, I know we said a lot of words about Nadu, and I don't want to keep harping on the subject. I know I say that, but I'm still making these videos. But this was supposed to be a video about specifically just the structure of the ban announcement, so let's get back into that. Now, a lot of people are very upset at WotC for not making an emergency announcement because we all assume what's going to happen. The question is, how do we fix that? Well, there's a couple of things, which Blake did kind of address this. So the first is to schedule the ban announcements right after the PT. Now the question is, do you remove the set release ban announcement window and just swap that with a PT, or do you just add a couple more ban announcement windows? There's a couple of positives and negatives. The biggest negative is if you just add a couple of ban announcements throughout the year, maybe there's too many and maybe there's too many opportunities for formats to change. But is that even necessarily a bad thing? I don't think it is. And the other issue is if you only do it after the PT, maybe there's a set release. Like, I think Bloomburrow is a great example of this because Bloomburrow, believe it or not, I found this out the other day, doesn't have a Pro Tour attached to it. The Bloomburrow set is coming out. The next big event is not until Worlds, which is going to be after Duskmorn comes out. So if you had a situation where, we'll say we'll only have a ban announcement after the Pro Tour, and there was, lo and behold, an issue from Bloomburrow, you couldn't actually fix that for another 2 to 3 months, which is definitely a downside. Another potential change is to specifically have scheduled banned and restricted announcements before an RCQ season starts. Now, I don't know exactly what the time frame is because Blake did mention they want people to know about changes well in advance. What exactly defines well in advance? Probably somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks. It's usually about the time that it takes to get cards in the mail for some people. So if you have a specific ban announcement window right before the RCQ season, if you know you're going to have a problem, then you can just get rid of it there, and then people can go about their testing prior to RCQ season starting. A lot of words were said today, and lo and behold, at the end of the day, personally, I think that more banned and restricted announcements are better than less. Right now, and I say less even though there is technically one attached to every set window, and with the amount of sets they're pumping out, maybe it's more than I think there is. And I also believe that the only reason that we're having this conversation is just the timing of the BNR announcement. And correct me if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I don't remember the BNR window like the last Pro Tours that were this year. I don't know if the BNR was before the Pro Tour, and I don't know if that was just specifically this one Pro Tour that they decided to have the scheduling a little bit off. I don't know if they wanted to give people more time with Modern Horizons 3 before the tournament. But at the end of the day, very unfortunate timing. I personally believe, at least I think the best for this is probably to just have specific BNR announcements attached to RCQ seasons rather than the sets themselves, because there's just a lot of churn. And if you have a specific window with the set itself, you say, okay, 2 weeks after the set, we're going to talk about bans. And then 3 weeks after, somebody finds, here's the Geological Appraiser combo deck. That's just to use an example. Then you run into some issues there. So honestly, I think we just need to have a couple more scheduled windows. Keep the ones that are for the set releases, but just attach some that are specific to RCQ seasons. And I think that would fix a lot of the issues. But I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Let me know your thoughts on the announcement or the announcement of no announcement that the announcement is going to happen on the announced date. Let me know which you think would be the best way to fix this. I would love to hear from you guys. Thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.